What is up, everybody? I'm your host, Nicole Mendes of the 10 Teams, Two Rings podcast, a Softball America podcast. Man, what a weekend we had. I think the two big tournaments that we saw, you had Clearwater where there was home runs, and you had Puerto Vallarta where a lot of the teams, it was tight ball games, not a lot of runs scored. It just kind of depended on what team that you were looking at to see if they had what they had whatever score it was. I think at one point it was well over 100 plus runs from last year to this year in Clearwater. It was nuts, absolute chaotic weekend. I'm here for it though. But let's go ahead and dive into what we're going to be talking about this week. So I think first thing we got to roll out is Big 12. We have four teams in the top 25. Oklahoma still at number 1, Texas number 2, Oklahoma State at number 11, and then Baylor at 22. I think that sounds about right. That's pretty cool that Big 12, they have 4. And I think as season goes on, we're going to have potential for more. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think Big 12 starting off this preseason really hot, looking really good all across the board. Want to preview Mary Nutter a little bit. If you don't know, that's basically a mini World Series. If you have never heard of it, check it out. It is one of the best softball tournaments for preseason or just softball tournaments, period, besides the World Series that you can go to, you can watch. A lot of talent, a lot of great games out there. We're going to talk a little bit about defensive plays, wonder which ones you guys would rank number 1, and then we're going to wrap up with the top matchups to watch this upcoming week because I won't lie. I was originally going to do 5 and I started looking at them and I was like, no, this is too tough. I don't know. I don't know where to put everybody. I have to do more than 5. So all that aside, let's go ahead. Let's get started. Man, it was a crazy weekend. I called games in Puerto Vallarta all weekend long. And then I got to watch a ton of softball. It was basically just in a softball bubble. I think that's my favorite thing about preseason. But the one thing that I don't love about preseason is the weather. I feel like every year we always hear about games that are canceled because of the weather. You have teams that are missing out on games and they don't meet that quota come into the year. They're scrambling to find midweek games. That's kind of what we saw from a lot of teams who were at the Clearwater tournament this weekend. But I want to start off with UCF because they had 3 top 25 matchups that were canceled due to weather. They have a crazy tough preseason schedule. I think it's to prep them. I mean, we've seen them in the past couple of years start to elevate, but they really want to be prepped for this Big 12 conference play. Like I just said, we have 4 teams in the top 25. So whenever you have that in conference, you got to be ready. You have to prep your team from not just entering into the conference, being able to compete, but also knowing that you have postseason to consider as well. So out of the 8 top 25 preseason matchups that they have scheduled for conference play, 3 of them just got canceled. But they have a couple more this upcoming weekend that will be really tough, really, really good. So those are definitely ones to watch out for. And I think they're wanting that challenge, right? They beat Wisconsin 21-9. Like those were the scores that we saw at Clearwater. And I don't know, maybe it was the Florida humidity. Maybe it was the impending weather doom. I don't know. And I was toying around, and I don't know if you guys can see this, but I was toying around with the emotions. And this was Clearwater right here. It was like this rainy, dreary, like this is what the weather conditions were like. I was like watching and I was like, oh my gosh, like the weather is nuts. And then we were toying around and I figured out you could do this. And I was like, I have to incorporate this some kind of way. But that's pretty much, if you're missed it or we're wanting to get a live replay, that's what Clearwater looked like this weekend. It was just rain after rain after rain. Puerto Vallarta had a ton of rain as well. Got a whole day of games canceled. We were able to recover and get that fixed. But it definitely put a little bit of a hitch in a lot of team schedules, not just UCF. Another noteworthy performance from this past weekend, Texas, they beat Stanford and they beat them pretty well. I want to shout out the freshman duo because I've been so impressed with what Texas has been doing. They've been so consistent so far this season against really, really good teams. It's not like they've been really consistent against good teams and then they play like competition. They look legit. They look really good. Kaden Henry, she went 2 for 3 with 2 home runs and 4 RBIs. Yeah, the freshman did that. And then you have your other freshman, Tegan Caven, who had 9 Ks in 4 innings, getting like what? And 2 freshmen just going at it, one in the circle, one in the box. If you're Mike White, you're like, yeah, this is going to be not just a fun year, but a fun next 4 years. Setting himself up really, really nicely. And then we have Oklahoma State. They talk about the weather. They were like, hey, we missed out on a few games. We want to make up for them. And then he just dials up his college teammate, his old coaching partner, Tim Walton. And this is the tweet that Tim Walton put out. He said, imagine this, 2 days of rainouts and cowgirl softball staying in Florida for more games this week. Kenny Gajewski texted me on Sunday at 2:38 p.m. to propose a game Monday night. By 3:40 p.m., we had umpires. By 5:40, we had a game. By 9:30 a.m. on Monday, we had the NCAA softball top 25 game on the SEC network. Like, we were basically saying, like, we want more softball. We got cheated. We got robbed because of the weather. And Kenny and Tim were like, hey, you know what? Let's give them a show. Kenny Gajewski calls him up and he said, you up? Can we come over? Like, let's hang out. Let's do something. I want to see you. And that's exactly what happened. And man, it was such a great game. And I think as softball fans, getting to watch Monday Night Softball was unreal. So I think we all can say a little bit of thank you there to Kenny Gajewski for that one. But kind of evolving into that Big 12 play, I think we know what we're getting into as conferences starting to approach and preseason is wrapping up. We know that Big 12 is going to be competitive. There's really great pitchers in the Big 12. You have really great hitters in the Big 12. And it's just going to be this battle back and forth. But I think what the catch-all is going to be is defense. Defensive is going to be the number one thing. Like, everyone's going to look at the numbers for the pitching and the batting, but the unsung heroes is going to be defense, because those are going to be the teams whenever they have solid defense and they're able to make not just the routine plays, but great plays, game-changing plays, momentum-changing plays. You're going to see those teams start to come out with more wins, and they're going to come out with more advantages, and they're going to have the edge whenever the game's on the line, because they did all that work in practice and they got all that defense in, they shaped themselves, they pushed themselves, and you're going to see these teams start to make unreal defensive plays that saves their pitchers runs, that save runs for their team. So whenever they go up to bat, they can just crush and feel free. So I pulled up 3 from this weekend that I thought were the top defensive plays. I think Texas, we'll start off with them. We might as well just keep raving about them for a minute. But the play that Texas had at second base, Washington was the one to go ahead and make that play. It was this ball that was hit deep into the 3-4 hole, and she's just ranging back, and it's hit hard, and you're surprised that she actually makes it. And then she goes and makes the throw to first, and it's just like, not only did she make that play, but she got the out. Like, that was unreal. So here's this video.
In the lineup that has not struck out tonight, and she'll keep it that way. Nice snag though at second. Washington robs a base hit, 1 down.
How about Lisa Washington? I love the way she moved.
Like, what is that defensive play? It's unreal. And you notice it's in the top of the 7th. Obviously, Texas, by that time, they're leading. But Stanford, they get some momentum. They get things going. And who knows? Things might start steamrolling. The way that Clearwater was going, things might start steamrolling. And so for them to make that play and to just cut off that momentum right away, don't even allow base runners on, that's huge for the team. And then the second play that I thought was like, oh my gosh, is Oklahoma. Of course, we're not surprised. It happened in the outfield. Jada Coleman is just the living highlight reel. I think of all the plays that she's made over the past few years, and I'm like, I can't believe this is routine. People expect her to make these plays and are kind of surprised whenever she doesn't, but it gets me every single time. She is so good out in the outfield. Watch this catch out in center. That catch, it's the over the shoulder. I'm sprinting as far back as I can. Shoot, I got to dive or else I'm not going to catch it. Oh, by the way, the fence is right there. There's this literal wall that I'm about to run into head first because I'm diving. The ice in her veins to be able to make that catch is unreal. I love that. And then the third one, gotta give a nod to that Monday night game. Oklahoma State, they had a diving catch at third by Taylon Edwards, and that's not even her main position. And she's like, you know what? The ball's up in the air. I'm gonna go for it. And you just see her just absolute layout, foul ball territory, just going for this ball. And she has to run pretty far.
When she was with Alabama, as that's popped up left side. Oh, what a grab by Edwards in foul ground. One down.
That's a highlight and then some for Taylon Edwards. Full extension. On the TV side, we take another look at it. Full dive near the Gator on deck circle along third.
I mean, the range, that's a good 20 feet, probably even more, but the range on that. And then she just pops up and there's just a big smile on her face. You just love to see that. I'm a big fan. I don't know which one I would rank number one. I think all in their own right. There's different things that make them great. I'm curious to see what you guys think, but I think for me, those were the top defensive plays that kind of stood out to me of just range, athleticism, willingness to go all out and get that. And so again, just going back to that conversation of pitchers, they're evolving, hitters, they're getting better. There's more video, there's more film, they're getting stronger. I mean, the amount of freshmen who have come in and just absolutely raked. I'm like, man, this year is going to be super interesting, but defenses, they're going to be key for these teams. So whenever you have defenses who can make plays like that, and it's expected, it's routine, it's regular, your team is set up in a great position. It gives your pitchers confidence. It gives your defense a little bit of, oh, she wants to do that. Let's see how far I can go. And then your offense, obviously, whenever your defense make plays like that, you save runs, puts a little bit of pressure off the offense of, okay, I don't need to worry so much about pressing, because I know my defense will come out and make those plays. But moving on, next topic, we're going to Mary Nutter. So setting the scene. Mary Nutter this upcoming weekend. It starts on Thursday, runs through Sunday. And like I said, it is, think World Series, just mini scale. There's about 8,000 to 10,000 people packed on a travel ballpark. They have behind the fence seating. There's people packed rows deep out in the outfield. You have pop-up tents, you have miniature stands, you have kids on a blanket. It's down the side. Like, it is crowded. It is crazy. It is loud. It is hectic. It's chaos. It's everybody who loves softball just packed into one spot. And I think of that as being the best time, because it's not just 8 teams and you get to see everybody. You get to see four fields going all at once, and then a couple fields farther down still going. And there's so many great games. And there's that feeling of the travel ball where all these college teams are playing against each other, but I played with you in high school and I know you because you're my friend and this and that. And everybody's just getting to see one another again. And it's just this big reunion that you get in February. The next time you get that reunion doesn't happen again until June at the World Series. So it's this big chaotic scene. There's fanfare. There's so many things. But as far as top games this weekend for the Big 12, I think UCF, again, with a tough schedule. So they had 3 of their top 25 games canceled because of the rain. You saw my thumbs down. You saw the rain coming down. That's kind of how it went. with that, they're going to face Oregon, which is really cool because UCF, there's a freshman on the team. Her name is Sierra Humphreys, and her sister, KK, she plays at Oregon. So that's a really good matchup, but a little bit special for them because every time you get to play against your sister, like it's just kind of bragging rights. The family doesn't know who to pick. The mom's always wearing a split gear. You think of like the Romero sisters and how that was a little bit of a battle. But that's going to be a fun game. And then you'll see them play Missouri. You'll see them play Tennessee. There's a lot of really good matchups for UCF. I'm curious to see how they do. So far on their schedule, they've been winning. They look good, but they've been playing okay teams. Now that they're playing with the big dogs, they're playing against the better teams. I want to see how they're going to produce. So I'm curious to watch that because you can see that the push to elevate and go to the next level is there, especially with the schedule matchup. But I'm curious to see how it looks. BYU, Oklahoma, I wouldn't say that their schedules are crazy, but they're playing against good, solid teams. I think Oklahoma, they have a game against Mississippi State. I got to call them in Puerto Vallarta, and Mississippi State, they look pretty good. They look much improved from last year. So I think that'll be a pretty decent game, a good one to watch if you're wanting to see a little bit of competition, a little bit of Big 12 SEC matchup right there. And then as far as the rest of the Big 12, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Kansas, and U of H, they will be across the country playing in smaller tournaments, a little bit more local, nothing too crazy. Iowa State, yeah, they'll be all over the place. So come to the part of the podcast where I just kind of ramble for a little bit. It's just my thoughts. I am so excited for this year. I'm so excited to see what this year is bringing for the Big 12 because we talked about last year, the addition of the 3 teams. I feel like it's changed the dynamic of this conference already. And you can feel the intensity, a little bit of pressure of teams going, okay, we're here. We need to be here. We need to be a little bit higher. And for me, that's so fun to see because it makes for better softball. It's not just teams who are just going out and they're like, all right, like if we win, we win. If we compete, like that's great. I love it whenever teams go out with the intention to win. They're not just happy to be there. They want to go out and they want to win. And Iowa State, they're always such a scrappy team. I think UCF, they're going to be a team that you have to watch out for. Texas Tech, they have their games. They don't have their games. It just kind of depends on what team that you get. But they've been working to become more consistent. Their bats are definitely ones that whenever they're hot, they're really hard to stop. So if they can get that batting side a little bit more consistent, I think they're going to have some really great games in the Big 12 as well. And then rolling on, obviously, Oklahoma, Baylor, Texas, Oklahoma State, those are kind of the top 4 of the conference, and they have just steadily been rising. I think Oklahoma the past several years, not just for the Big 12, but for the nation, they've really set the standard. And I think if you're Texas, if you're Oklahoma State, if you're anybody in the Big 12, getting to play against Oklahoma over and over and over again sucks, yes, but it forces you to be better. I mean, if you're a player and I'm playing them again, and again, I'm sick of losing, right? I got to figure out a way to, if you can't beat them, join them, right? I can't beat them whenever I'm down here. I got to learn how to elevate my game. And you see that with the recruiting. You see that with the play. You see that with just like the softball IQ that these teams are having. And I think that's why Texas has done so well so far this year. Oklahoma State and then Baylor, they're coming off of injury and they're still playing really well. They had a couple of really great games against ULL that I got to watch on Sunday, and those were fun to watch. It was a battle. It's scrappy. But I love to see that back and forth between these teams. So I'm really excited for the conference and how it's going to go. But whenever it comes to top matchups for the weekend, I think my number one, I'm going to have to say Oklahoma State. They're playing against Washington. That matchup is going to happen Thursday at 12:30. That to me is the best, hands down, the best Big 12 matchup that you can watch this weekend, because I've got to watch this Washington team, and I haven't seen Washington look this good since like 2019, right? That was whenever they're in the World Series championship playing against Florida State. They were a really great team. They're able to fire on all cylinders. They have a pitching staff. They have the hitting. They just, even though that the depth isn't quite there, they're a close team. They're good looking. And Oklahoma State, they've had some great wins. A couple of the games at Clearwater, like that game against LSU, that one was tough. The rain was going, it was back and forth. Obviously, the pitcher can't hang on to the ball. Bases go around, runners get on, you get one hit, and game's over. And I mean, it is what it is. You have to learn how to adapt and overcome and win out from those situations. But that's a really tough situation. So I think OSU, they're hungry to rectify some of those losses that they got. So they're chomping at the bit. And I think that to me is going to be the best matchup. Next, I have Tennessee and Stanford. Think of this as a little bit of a rematch. So Texas, you saw that clip earlier. Texas played Stanford. They beat them pretty handily. Like, it didn't look like they were struggling at all. And I think this rematch, Stanford, anybody can win a one-off, right? But whenever you face them again and again and again, that's where the real challenge is. And so I'm excited to see Stanford's response, because they're a really good team, but they're slow right now, getting into rhythm, getting into their groove. But you have a little bit of fuel, a little bit of motivation behind it that can make a okay team really great, especially whenever you have an arm like Kennedy. And I think it's going to be a pitcher's duel, this rematch. You're going to have the two like mighty arms going back and forth, back and forth. So I think they'll be tested, and it's exactly what you want to see out of your team. Texas, they're pulling no punches. Talk about another team that's had a really tough preseason schedule. UCF and Tennessee, they're playing Saturday at 7 p.m. So those two games are going to be going at the same time. UCF, they're playing Tennessee. They're playing a highly ranked Tennessee team that has a deep pitching staff of arms, that has a deep lineup, a lot of great hitters throughout, pretty solid defense. So I think this is, again, they're scheduling these tough matchups because they want to be tested. They want to know where they stand. Because once you know where you stand, it's like, okay, this is where we have to improve. It's black, it's white. I got to be better here. We're really good here. And I think that's going to be a fun game to see as far as competitive wise, but as far as where UCF, what they're going to look like whenever they're facing against the better teams in the Big 12. And then U of H, they actually are traveling out to LSU, and they're going to play them twice. Once on Friday, once on Saturday. Friday is at 6:30. Saturday is at 4 p.m. I think it needs to be said, U of H, they have a lot of raw talent, but in some aspects, they're just a little sloppy. And so you want to see them do well because they have it, and you're like, yes. And then they just do something, and there's like an error, or there's just undisciplined swinging, or you're like, and it kind of deflates you. You want to see them be tested. You want to see them pushed. And so I think this game against LSU, both of these teams have a similar style of like a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, a little bit of something to prove. I think this is a push that U of H needs to get better. So that should be a fun 2-game series. If you're wanting to watch something Friday night, that would be the one that I would recommend. And then you have Baylor and Missouri. This one to me is also like, this might be like number two game to watch. It's Saturday at 10 p.m. was the only reason why I put it down so far. 10 p.m. All these are in Central Time, but 10, it's kind of tough. You have to be a crazy softball fan to want to watch this, but it's also on a Saturday. So, I mean, do with that information what you will. If you want to watch really good softball, I guarantee it's probably going to be the best and the only game on at 10 p.m. But I think both of these teams are equally matched with pitching and hitting. Baylor, they're returning 2 of their pitchers who were injured in the fall, and they already look good. But we had a couple of interviews with Tim Walton, not Tim Walton, with Baylor, and they were saying they're starting to get better and they're starting to feel more comfortable. It's always that, okay, I got hurt. Where do I stand? Like, am I 100% comfortable? Maybe not yet. Maybe I need to get a couple games in me. and they're starting to return to that. I feel 100%. I feel comfortable. I feel like I can be the me that I'm used to being. And so I think this Missouri team is going to be a really good challenge for Baylor. But Baylor had a great doubleheader against Louisiana Lafayette this past weekend, and that was a challenge. That was a battle, it was scrappy, and I think that's going to help them as they roll over into this Missouri game. Oklahoma versus Mississippi State. That is Friday at 7:30. I think this one, you have Coach Gasso and the mighty Oklahoma, and everybody's rooting against Oklahoma to lose. We just want you to lose. We don't want you to win another national championship again. We just want you to lose a game, period. It's been over a year since they've lost a game. I think watching them and watching how they handle all that pressure and all the noise from the media, that can take away a lot from the game. But they do a good job, Oklahoma, staying within the game, staying within themselves, and they're fun to watch. And Mississippi State this past weekend, got to watch them at Puerto Vallarta, and they're kind of fun to watch. They have a couple of players that they've brought in, freshmen, transfer portal, that have made a difference. And I think that they're going to give Oklahoma a bit of a run for their money. I'm saying it. I think Oklahoma's still going to win, but I think it will be a better game than you might expect it to be if you're looking at the teams from last year. I think that will be a good matchup as far as team to team. But going back to bringing things around full circle, going back to the state of softball as it stands today, I think that we will see this year within the Big 12. So media, there's a lot of talk on media, whether it's fans just tuning in and getting to know, oh, wow, softball's great. I have a lot of opinions about it. Or, hey, Oklahoma and Texas, they're going to be moving to the SEC next year, and they're talking about that, or they're talking about SEC and this and that, or even just critics and social media and TV and this and that and NIL. And I think that brings in a whole level of chaos for these teams. I think that you're going to see a lot of coaches address that as the season starts getting underway. I think this year I've seen more media coverage on the games, which I love, because as a fan, as somebody who is a washed up has-been college player, I love being able to go back and watch those games and being able to say, like, oh man, I like this team. I like to follow this team. Oh, wow, this team's really improved. And I think that continued media coverage is awesome. I'm part of it now. But I think we're going to see a lot of coaches start to address that and say, our team has decided to kind of maybe lay off some of that stuff in season. It's a bit of a distraction. So it'll be really interesting to see how that evolves and goes as the season is underway. I think, like I said, for this weekend, the top matchup for me is going to be OSU and Washington. I think if you are a fan of softball, that's the game that you want to watch. That's the game that you want to star. Whenever teams get you excited about games, I think about my own experience of a newly fan, right? And I'm excited to watch this game. I'm excited to watch postseason games because they're good, because they're competitive, because the teams are in it. And to have games like that in preseason is just so important for the sport to be able to grow it and just make it bigger and bigger. Whenever you have games like that, it's just phenomenal. And I think that the Big 12 has done a great job this year. The coaches scheduling those games that get you excited. I can't wait to see how this weekend goes. I can't wait to see how it all develops and unfolds, but it's going to be a good one. I think going to watch that game, going to watch Oklahoma and Mississippi State. I think that one's going to be good. Missouri and Baylor, that's another one that I'll probably want to watch and circle and star for myself. But as far as everything else goes, week 1, done, check. Week 2, done, check. Week 3, we're about to enter into the last weekend of preseason before we get into conference. So tune in next week, because next week we're just going to be talking about Big 12. What are the first week matchups going to be looking like? Who are they going to be? We got a couple of weeks in between, but the big preseason tournaments after this weekend are going to be wrapped up. So we're going to start previewing Big 12 play. And man, am I excited. We're going to get a couple of interviews in. So make sure you guys tune in next week. And that is all for me. I'm Nicole Mendes. This is 10 Teams, 2 Rings on the Softball America Podcast Network.